for peace of mind. Hello, how are you?
I am well. How are you tonight?
Happy belated birthday since I get to see your face.
Thank you. Oh my word. Friday was so crazy.
I'm bummed my package hasn't arrived yet. I'm expecting it'll probably be here Tuesday. So I will be celebrating you on Tuesday too.
Awesome. Thank you.
Extendo birthday.
That was one of the things that I always used to love about having my birthday being near Labor Day, is that usually it was a long enough weekend that my cousins would be able to come to my town and we would have a birthday celebration together. They were sort of motivated because that's actually where my grandparents lived, was in the same town as me. And so it wasn't just like, come see me. It was everyone's like, oh, we're gonna go see grandma. And by the way, it's her birthday. And so it was kind of always our last hurrah. And because I grew up north, we didn't start school until after Labor Day.
Right.
And so it was really sort of our last hurrah of summer. And I'm like, yay! So this is sort of my first like big birthday party in my adult, like since I was like 6th grade.
You had a lot of people celebrating with you. It was wonderful.
It was really amazing. Well, the thing that's kind of struck me is I thought like, okay, for SCA events, they've been having like cutoffs of those packets of like 100. So I said, I know, I'll cut it off at 40 because I'm 40 years old, right? Cut off for 40. And then it kind of exploded.
How many did you send out?
I ended up sending out, I think 78 was my final total.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So having done a whole great big mail out thing to lots of people, that takes a lot.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of why like I originally meant to like get it out on Monday so that hopefully more people would be able to get it beforehand. But it was just I just couldn't get it. I couldn't get it all done. And my mom flew in from New York State on Monday. And so she was also, so I was kind of, oh, I've got to worry about her. And I was just like, I can't, I just have to put it on, I just have to finish packing it on Tuesday. And yeah, so that's part of why I'm very sorry that your packet hasn't arrived yet, but hopefully you can have a little fun with it when it arrives.
I will be celebrating you whenever it arrives, just as I was celebrating you on Friday, and happiest of birthdays. I'm so glad that it went so splendidly. I mean, you had so many people enthusiastic and their spirits brightened by all of the work and I know that was a ton of work.
Well, it was a lot of work. But the funny thing was, like, I was kind of like, oh, I'm okay. So I spend the month of July with my parents. And I was kind of like, I really don't want to have to worry about it in the month of July. I really don't want to, like, I'll worry about it when I get home. And then I started talking to my mom about that little, well, as you may have seen from other people, or that you will see when you're on Tuesday, I have a little string of little paper flags, like what some groups use to go around the edge of like list fields, right? Only this one is just multicolored, right? It's not for any particular, it doesn't have like my badge on it or anything, but it's just pretty. And I was saying like, I kind of want, well, so I was staying at my now deceased grandmother's house, and she had one that she'd gotten from from a commercial card. And I went to my mom, like, this is what I'm thinking about. Because she was having like, I really don't know what you're talking about. Like, I want this. And she's like, oh, I can do that. Like, my mom runs her own business and she has her own at-home office. And so she's like, I've got office supplies, I've got printers, I've got paper cutters. Like, I can do this. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I was going to take care of this when I was home in August, but if you really want to do it, Mom, you go right ahead. And she went gangbusters. I mean, she was like, she had this whole setup on their dining room table and was like systematizing and all that kind of thing. And I was like, okay. And she's like, okay, so now we're going to do the next thing. I'm like, no, we're going to stop and I'm going to take care of this when I get home. And even as it was a little bit like, okay, gonna string them on the string and pull them. And it's, my mom and I are very similar in a lot of ways and very different in a lot of ways, in that my husband has described her as like me, only more so.
Okay.
So she's a very intense version of me. But one of the things that's very different between the two of us, and this is sort of a time where your parents go one way, and so you go sort of the opposite direction to sort of overcompensate. She's very much, as she puts it, international fudge factor. Like, close enough, make it happen, it's done.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm all about like precision and following directions and following the rules and doing things so everything's even and straight. And she's like, no, just international protractor. And so, so she sent me home with all of the little individual paper flags of all these different colors and all these different shapes. And I had no idea how many of each one I had.
So
and
you
in,
counted.
I'm sorry?
I'm betting you counted.
Oh yeah, I laid them out on the floor in my living room. I made a spreadsheet. And I also wanted to make sure, so again, different shapes and different colors and all those kinds of things. And I wanted to make sure that everybody got a variety, right? I didn't want anybody to get one banner, a little string of pennants. They were all exactly the same, right? So I wanted to make sure. So I created a random number generator and I coded each one of the different combinations of colors and shapes. And so I would run a random number generator, be like, okay, those are the ones. Oh, but that has too many repeats. So we'll switch that one out for this other one that's not included. Okay. Because that's how my mom and I are very different. So anyway, so that's kind of a little bit of behind the scenes, how the sausage got made in the Beatrix Fontaine household. But it was a lot of fun.
I think there needs to be a Beatrix's 40th birthday party wiki page.
You give a woman a hammer, all she sees are nails. I will see what I can write up. And actually, I think only 2 people that I sent packets to aren't in the SCA. One is a friend of mine who was just like, look, I want to see the crafts you do. And I don't know anything about this SCA stuff, but if you're only posting your crafts on your SCA Facebook account, I want to be on it. Cool. And then I had another friend. They came over for dinner like the Thursday, well, like when I was trying to sort of start putting things together, the Thursday before I wanted to mail them out. And so she saw, like, she doesn't know anything about the SCA, but she saw like all of my stuff and she's like, what is this? And I was like, well, I'm hosting a virtual birthday party and sending out packets, and here's all the stuff that I'm really excited about, how it's all coming together and all the different combinations of things. And she's like, wow, that's really amazing. So when we saw each other then at church on Sunday, she gave me a birthday card with money to help pay for postage.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. So I was like, you know what? I know her address. I'm just going to mail it to her. And she'll just get a packet just so that she could be awesome. So yeah, so it was 70, yeah, I think 78 total, and only 2 of them are non-SCA. So it's kind of a totally unofficial SCA event thing.
And that's why it needs a wiki page, because it is part of the Time Like No Other and virtual SCA events, and you created your own SCA event. You had people from all over the entire kingdom and probably neighboring kingdoms celebrating.
I had a few people from Palantir. I had a few people from Ethelmark. Yeah, I think that's pretty much Ethelmark, Palantir, and Ansteorra. I mean, because that's like the 3 places I've lived, so it makes sense. Okay, well, I will see what I can write up, and I will submit it to you.
That would be lovely. And that leads perfectly into tonight's discussion topic.
Yay!
Which is InterKingdom Anthropology. And you've actually lived in more than one kingdom.
Yeah.
I started off in another kingdom, but I only played for like 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And I have visited there a couple of times, and there's some different things about the Ellens.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
But I kind of wanted to just get additional perspectives on, Ansteorra's crown says unique and singular.
Yeah.
Okay, what makes us unique and singular? And not just, I didn't want to say better, because I don't, but what makes us unique? What are things that are purely Ansteorran? I mean, I know that we have the Ansteorra Chili Knight, and I know where Rapier got started, and we're the kingdom that has the most intense cult of Gloriana. But what else is there? What else do we do that other kingdoms don't do? And what do other kingdoms do that would be really cool for us to adopt and maybe learn about and to try? And like, the one that always comes to mind for me anyway is in the Outlands, the Queen's Guard is a thing. If you are a member of the Queen's Guard, you wear a royal tabard at all times. You are instantly identifiable. If you are on duty, you are wearing the ensign of the Queen. She is escorted at all times by at least 2 people, usually 4. I've seen as many as 6. And they are all dressed alike, and they are all there to physically guard the Queen. But it's neat because if you need a member of the Queen's entourage, you know who to talk to. There's an immediate visual indicator, and a single person with one attendant can get lost in a crowd. But when the Queen is attended by this entire group, they are instantly spottable. You know where she is. She can be found quickly, etc. And I've always really, really liked that. Number one, I like the show of heraldry. Heraldry good. Number 2, immediately identifiable, findable, connect-toable. And just it enhances communication. I need to get word to the Queen. I don't know how to go about doing that. She's intimidating, but hey, this person is wearing her colors. I can approach them and I can get, maybe they could pass this along to her if I'm not comfortable, it just bridges a gap and it increases the pageantry. So I am going to be proposing that we do something along those lines for the Princess of Vindheim. We'll see. I may have to make a bunch of heraldic tabards to get away with it, but we'll see.
And one of the things that I like about that idea, not having lived in the Outlands, I don't have as intense of a feeling about that particular practice, but it's also very period. I mean, one thing that we really don't have a sense of that I'm learning about sort of in living in the SCA is how many people would have had a staff, like people, and how big that staff would have been. And, I know one thing I had when I lived in Callantyre almost 15 years ago, I was very good friends with the king and queen who reigned right before I moved away. And one of the things that drove them batty is that they couldn't go anywhere alone. And that's a very modern atmosphere, while a very period view is you don't go anywhere alone. That loneliness is a thing for peasants. Like, you don't, if you're of someone of rank, you have people. And because we're a volunteer organization, because we're not really nobility, we don't have that same power of commanding, like, all right, my 5 guard, you better come with me because I'm on my way. I just love the periodicity of that particular practice.
Yeah. I know in Callantyre they do a lot of singing, that is integral to the kingdom structure, and
well, and the most important thing is most importantly group singing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Together. And I feel, I lived in Callantyre for 5 years. But I was kind of a baby. I mean, not literally a baby. I was an adult, but because I was so new to the SCA, I wasn't, there's a saying, a fish doesn't know what water is. And so I was learning what the SCA is. And it was only later that I'm like, oh, that's just Callantyre. So singing together, like, I really didn't learn. I knew that was kind of one of the things that very often happens that's in Callantyre is they would have what they call post revels. So the idea is it's sort of an after party where people could be in garb, people could not be in garb. There was generally some drinking and additional food involved, but it was sort of a safe place where if you wanted to party after the event, you could usually stay overnight there and then leave the next morning. And inevitably at the post revel, there would be a bonfire and there would be singing. I have actually never been to a post revel, partly because I usually had to drive home and I don't stay up late and I don't drink a whole lot, and so But when I was in attendance of my friends who were king and queen, I was riding all over the kingdom with someone who was much more experienced, who was a pelican. And he was like, the first, again, how old this was. The first CD that went into his car CD player was a Callantyr song recorded CD. And we sang the same 12 songs at every event that I rode with him to, which was pretty much every event for 9 months. And so I learned the Callantyr songs. So that, and that's one thing that then, so now when I went to Gulf Wars, the last time we had Gulf Wars, never been to Gulf Wars before, went to the Callantyr party. And yeah, there was some amount of solo singing, but a lot of the songs I already knew because I'd been listening to Callantyr song CD. And that was the whole function of it, was to say like, okay, everyone's expected to know these 12 songs. So we're going to disseminate them as much as possible, let people practice them at home. So then when we come together, nobody feels like, well, I can't sing because I don't know the song. You're like, no, everybody knows the songs. And there wasn't as much of an emphasis on solo bardic performance. Like it has happened. Yeah, there were lots of people who would, that would actually happen at feasts. They would have, people would stand up and volunteer to do solo bardic performances, and that was the context for that. But there was, but the group singing would happen in post rebels, and then if you went to war, and they would all muster together and then march off to the battlefield, and they would all sing. So yes, that's a very Callantyr thing. One thing that, again, starting off in Callantyr and then coming to Ansteorra, I really had crash course learning on rapier combat in general, and then the culture of the white scarves, because when I left Callantyr, there was not any cut and thrust rapier, any kind of combat of that sort done in Callantyr. I was on listservs, and they would have conversations about it, and it would be pretty much like, shut up, we've already had this conversation, go away. I mean, not to me, because I was just watching it. I'd be like, ooh, this is a thing, okay. And then I come to Ansteorra, which is like intense. I mean, and people are sort of like, how would you live here in Ansteorra and you don't know about rapier fighting? How are you in the SCA and you don't understand about rapier fighting? And I'm like, I grew up in Callantyr. They're like, oh, you're one of the slow kids. I'm like, yeah, basically I'm one of the slow kids. So tell me. I mean, it wasn't, nobody actually said that to me directly, but it was sort of the understanding of like, oh, you don't know about rapier. Okay. You're a newbie in that aspect of it. I'm like, yeah, I'm a newbie. So my first time going to, I mean, again, the honoring of the whole, like the fact that there's a song composed for the people who are fighting in Queen's Champion to sing to the Queen. It's like,
is there? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I can't find it anywhere. So it's kind of word of mouth. You know, if you know it, you know it. And if you don't know it, you got to learn it. It's from somebody. But yeah,
hang on. I need to take notes about this, because this is not a thing that I know.
Okay.
And oh crap, something to write on. Something to write with.
When you need.
Yay!
Yay! It's Libby. Elsa, pardon. Okay, so dip fruits, charge camera batteries, bag blondies, bag chair. Okay, sorry, old notes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
probably Elsa can give additional insight into this because she's been here longer than me.
Maybe able to. So a song sung for the Queen
at the beginning of Queen's Champion
by white scarves.
I mean, by everybody, by all the combatants.
Okay.
Right. Again, if anyone knows different, go ahead. But this is just, I showed up at my first Queen's Champion and said, you know, I was approached being told that I should help with voice heraldry. So I'll see if I can help out with list heraldry at Queen's Champion. And so I sent a message to the event steward and said, hey, I'm interested in helping with heralding for Queen's Champion. And they said, great. And I didn't hear any more about like, this is who you should talk to. And so I showed up and I said, hi, hi, I'm looking for the event steward. Oh yeah, so and so. And they said, I'm really interested in helping with heralding. They said, great. There was one lady, she texted me before the event. And I'm like, what's her name? Beatrix? They said, yeah, you know her? I'm like, yeah, I am her. Okay. So I was kind of, and I'd never done list heralding before of any kind.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. So they put me in touch with, well, basically I grabbed Baroness de Lis of Eldern Hills because I knew her. And they put me in touch with Don Sebastian because he's awesome and he knows about rapier tournaments. And then the Herald of Eldern Hills, who was hosting the event, that we 4 of us did the tournament, and I think only Don Sebastian had ever really done it before. So anyway, so that was very educational for me, and there was a lot of me being like, oh, this is what we do. Oh, that's what a Swiss 5 is. Oh, okay.
Cool. I don't even know what a Swiss 5 is.
Oh, okay.
And I've been playing for 20 years.
Okay.
I hear it all the time. I don't know what it is.
Would you like me to tell you?
Another time.
Okay, that's fine. But yes, there's a time. So each of the different combatants come and usually present some kind of token or physical letter of intent to the queen, saying, you know, much like Crown Tournament, right? Asking for the honor of fighting in her tournament. And then they go on for a long time. And then when that's all done, all of the combatants and white scarves who are present go forward and sort of like a swearing fealty pile, and they have a song that they sing to the queen about the honor of fighting for the queen, for Queen's Champion. And again, I didn't know what the song was, but everyone's like, oh, they're singing the song. And I'm like, cool, great. So apparently there's a song. So somebody should poke Master Robin and be like, what's the song?
That's precisely who I was thinking I would reach out to.
Yes, because he's the man.
He is. He's just awesome.
He's one of those people that, like, I'd love to friend on Facebook because he's so awesome, but he probably doesn't know me from Eve, so.
Friend him on Facebook anyway.
Okay.
I will. Yeah, I know him personally, and yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kitty.
Okay, hang on. I'm going to send him a message right now.
He's just finishing up San Japan. I don't know if he's home from that.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a big, massive demo thing.
So the first time I ever heard that song was a Queen's Champion. I think it was JP and Jillian's second. And I had no clue what was going on. And everybody was standing around singing. And I was like, that's very cool. And everybody's like, every time. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. Thank you for confirming my experience, Elsa, because I was a bit like, is this just me? No.
Yeah, no, I just don't hang out in that place and time ever. So, yeah.
I mean, I would love to go to more Queen's Champions. It's just, you know, unfortunately, that's not one of my, like, I must go events. So next time, if I can.
Well, and it wasn't my first Queen's Champion. It was just the first one I caught at that exact moment, because it's after, sorry, Zabeda, I cut you off.
Go ahead, please.
It was an event that we felt like we were going to be on call for. And then it ended up that we didn't actually have work. And so I was sitting around hanging out, seeing what needed done, and everything was done. So I was watching the event in a way I never had before. And so, great.
And I don't know about other kingdoms other than Callantyr and a little bit of Ethelmark and a little bit of East Kingdom, mostly Callantyr, but it seems like Ansteorra is very much emphasizes tournament activities, like in terms of fighting, as opposed to melee. That tournaments are kind of a big deal and sort of the main fighting activity, rather than, like, in Callantyr, melees are are the big deal. Like, okay, tournaments here and there, but fighting as a big group is much more of an emphasis there than it is here. Again, just InterKingdom Anthropology.
I feel like that's been my experience too, right?
Okay, I just sent a message to both you and Robin of Gilwell to do a extremely informal introduction because you are both good people and you should be able to connect. So.
Oh, thank you. You're sweet.
So Elsa, you have traveled far and wide as a member of Moonshadow's Lion Dragon Guard and just on your own with Charles, and you've had many, many adventures. Can you provide any insights or stories or fun snippets of info about what makes Ansteorra unique, or what are cultural things that other kingdoms do that would be super cool if we adopted and or stole outright for Ansteorra?
Ooh. 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 I highly enjoy Callantir's Order of the Oath. That's one of my favorite things that they do.
What is it?
It's, well, and I've never lived there, so all I can tell you is secondhand what I've heard out of their stories, but they've got a non-armigerous order that is entirely, this person is the least reputable person I know for such topics, and then they are just given carte blanche to be disreputable in all the right ways.
Yeah,
and it is a good trouble kind of situation, as far as I've...
So sort of like the Flaming Weasel?
Similar. It's comparable to Lion, but it's meant to be, watch out, this person's going to shenanigate BT dubs.
Yeah, it's an anti-award.
Okay.
In fact, there's the oath is an abbreviation for the Order of the Archaic Fumant. And it's...
Oh, wait a minute. Archaic Fumant?
Fumant. F-E-W-M-E-N-T. Fumant.
Isn't that another word for poop?
Yes.
Dragon group, yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So it's the idea is that it's, well, okay. And just to show you sort of the role that this plays is that, you know how when people are announced into Crown Tournament, they are put in line by precedent? Mm-hmm. Same thing happens in Callantir. If you have an oath, an Order of the Archaic Fumant, you can opt to put yourself at the end of the line. It's and the, okay.
Behind the AOAs is the point, right?
Oh, I'm sorry?
So people of really respectable rank can end up behind the AOAs. So that really messes with their stacking of lists.
Yeah, so you've got peers and dukes and duchesses. Well, it's mostly dukes, honestly. But anyway, mostly, you know, people who have reigned in Callantir before, and suddenly they're behind the AOAs, and you're suddenly like, wait, what? Who? No.
And then the most recent goes to the back of the line of that, I want to say.
Yes. Oh no, it's no. The oldest goes to the back of the line.
Got it.
The highest precedent goes farthest back.
Because they just haven't been as disreputable for as long, so they're stuck closer. I see.
Yeah. So the idea is that Pavel was a historic, legendary person in Callantir. There's a verse. Okay, there's a song that they sing that's about if Callantir was all, you know, this ship, and all the different people who are sort of famous in Callantir are people on the ship, and they do sort of funny things. And they say that Pavel teaches swimming upon that man of war. And the way that Pavel would teach swimming is throwing people overboard. Yeet! So he was the first oath. And the idea is that puts him at the lowest precedent. And so then all the other oaths sort of pile on top of him and squish him farther and farther down in the precedent. That's the way that one of the oaths once explained it to me. And the oath scroll is on the back of an old grocery bag, written in crayon. This is all pre, like, this is the tradition. This is how it is done. Old paper grocery bag, ripped open, written in what they call it hatchet hand. So not writing like this, but right? Usually there are significant misspellings. preferably humorous ones. But it's, yeah, usually it's somebody got up to shenanigans and or did something really stupid but not quite illegal that got the attention of the crown. And they become an oaf. I don't think there are limits on how many oafs you can make in a crown, in a reign, but usually they try to keep it to one.
And it's standout stuff.
Yeah. Oh,
story.
Yeah.
Like what kind of?
Well, I can tell a story of one oaf because again, I was sort of in on that story, and I was able to be like,
I'm going to pause you for 1 second. Switch windows. Robin just sent you a message.
Oh, great. Thank you. Where is it?
It's on Facebook.
I know, I see it. I'm just trying to find the actual friend request. There we go.
There you go.
Oh, it's being
happy to facilitate.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Okay, good.
Okay, a story of an oaf.
So, story of an oaf. So, there was a person who thought it would be funny at Lily's War, Calantyr's War, to sort of make fun of the Outlands by doing a thing called Stagman. So it's a person who basically got like a antler headdress and fur loincloth and painted himself entirely green from head to foot and ran out on the battlefield without any armor or anything like that, right? Just his body and thing, going, Outlands! Okay.
Sorry.
That's a very Outland sort of thing to do.
Oh, sure. This was, that's one level of stupidity. The problem was that one of his friends was getting knighted that same night, and he painted himself in acrylic paint, not body paint. Yeah. So, and we were all, and everyone was supposed to be like, you don't tell, you're not supposed to reveal the identity of Stagman. Well, Stagman was painted from head to naked feet in acrylic stinking paint at Lily's War, where there is a limited number of showers. So, needless to say, after dinner, when they were suddenly like, oh, words I'm not allowed to say, I have to be cleaned up for a peerage ceremony for court tonight. So all their buddies, all this person's buddies, dragged him off to a hotel room in a nearby town and like scrubbed him raw to try to get him cleaned up so that he could be part of the peerage ceremony for his friend that night. And first of all, apparently the people that were at Lily's that year who were from the Outlands weren't terribly pleased with Stagman. They were a little offended. So my people had to kind of try to work that out, like try to smooth that over. But then they also had like, dude, if you're gonna be stupid in a smart way. Don't be stupid in a stupid way. And this person was kind of got under the skin of the people that were my friends. And so they were just like, we are oafing this man. He did this. He was total, again, he didn't break any laws, right? Nobody got hurt, except for maybe the fact that he had his skin like rubbed off. But yeah, they were just like, you're an oaf. We're setting this up now. And so yeah, so that's an example of an oafish thing. Again, not illegal. Nobody got hurt. I don't know if alcohol was involved. There probably was, but not enough to kick them off site. But still, like, dude, you're an idiot.
Gotcha.
I mean, one of the more famous people. I mean, okay, so Pavel was there's a story in Calontyr of they were at Penzik and Pavel was chasing the king of Calontyr. This was years and years ago. Okay, Pavel is now no longer with us, so this is not like recent. Was chasing the king of Calontyr down a dirt road of Penzik, beating him with a traffic cone.
Why?
Because from what I understand, again, this is when I was but young and wee in this society and sort of, oh, tell me stories, is that they kind of made this like,
that's still me.
oh yeah, they grand that the king was trying to drive Pavel nuts, crazy, by being like, oh, great and mighty Pavel, oh, so whenever he would see him, he would have him and all of his retainers come and bow down to the ground before Pavel because he was so amazing. And he was like, stop, come on, people, this is really stupid. And so finally it just got so much under his skin, and he happened to have a traffic cone nearby that he grabbed the traffic cone, this is Pavel, and turned on the King of Calontir and said, stop bowing to me. But, and then of course the king runs away along with his people, and Pavel chases after him. And so then there goes the King of Calontir being chased by a man wielding a traffic cone. Again, these are oafish type behaviors.
Gotcha.
There's another one. I don't know if this is one that earned anyone an oath, but an example is Fernando. I don't know his whole name because it's very long, but his abbreviated name is Ferd, and his sort of unofficial motto is that a bored Calantiri is a dangerous, or else, sort of say a bored Ferd is a bored Ferd is a dangerous Ferd. One of the things that I think they did was at some war they were really
is a Ferd at the same grant level as a centurion?
Ferd is his own name.
Oh, okay. I thought that there was a Ferdman was an award.
AOA level. Whose Carlos level to centurion?
Yeah. So that's a Ferd and Feared are not the same thing, but anyway, it's short for Fernando. And Ferd, Ferd, is short for Fernando, and that's this particular person.
Okay, thank you.
Count in Calontir, and again, somewhat locally famous. He's also an oath, although also a really amazing guy, but he's kind of shenanigan. So at one point, I think there's kind of somebody had parked a golf cart, I think in like the Calontir camp at Gulf Wars, and then left it, and it was kind of in the way. And it kind of messed with the whole, like any attempt at having a period style atmosphere in the Calontir camp, and they got really annoyed with it. So Ferd got the idea that they would take all of the Calontir scutums, the rectangular shields that kind of are convex, and stack them around hide the golf cart by stacking scutums all the way around it until it was entirely buried in scutums. And you're like, golf cart? What golf cart? We don't know about any golf cart. So again, those are not, I don't know if that's severe enough for Ferd to, I don't think he got an oath for that. I think he was well oathed by then.
That's just into NAD covers. Yeah, that's just good housekeeping.
Yeah. But again, those kinds of like mischief type things, but that's an oath. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah. Again, kind of an anti-lion, sort of an anti-award, but kind of for being very notable in the kingdom.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's not a broken stare thing. It's not a like, you're a bad person and we don't like you and people should know to avoid you, so we're giving you an award so people know. It's more like mischief.
Okay. Like
Asaph. Danger.
Like I could see Asaph falling into that crowd just so nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, Asaph does get along with that crowd just so nice.
Yeah.
So not like, I don't want to call anybody out. A knight of our kingdom who had to undertake a very long quest of penance.
No, that's a different thing, because Asaph is entirely, this is going to be funny, stand back.
Gotcha.
And that oath of penance was I can tell you that story, probably not right now. That was a knight telling fellow knights and the queen what he was going to do and following through with it, and then getting called to the carpet for acting on his word as a goddamn knight. So there's layers to that one.
Okay. Gotcha. But Asaphs are more lighthearted.
Asaph is like pitting squires against each other to go like drive golf carts down places because he thinks it would be funny to watch.
Gotcha.
There's a story about JP and Asaph and Rabbit cart jousting.
I've heard stories of JP and Owen and Rabbit and golf carts and golf wars.
Maybe Asaph was involved in that one, but that's very still much an Asaph story.
Something about a kilt.
Asaph was involved, even if he wasn't involved. There was still
involved by extension.
Yeah. So things that our kingdom does, I'm in a weird spot because traveling the wider kingdom is the same in my head as traveling to Callantir, is the same as traveling to Gulf War. And so in Moonshadow, where we don't strictly feel connected with the baronial groups in many, many ways, partly because we were a shire for so long. And then as province, we don't have landed representation. So we just don't get the news bulletins that the rest of the kingdom gets in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a whole thing. Where I'm going with that is I can tell you more IKA for Vinheim than I can for Ansteorra.
Fair enough.
But a thing that I discovered in my travels was, do you know the differentiation between kingdoms of the book versus kingdoms of the word?
Yes. I've heard about that from Inman.
Perfect.
And let me make sure that I understood it correctly. So as I understand it, kingdoms of the book are the kingdoms such as the West, where it's very, we do things by the book. You will not go outside the boundaries of what is allowed within the rules. We are very, the rules are there to protect us and make sure that we can have fun.
Right.
And the people of the word are more like, we understand the spirit of the rules, but it's my word to you as an opponent and my honor on the field that keeps you safe, and our collective connection to one another that lets us have fun, not the rules in the book. Am I paraphrasing that correctly?
That's how I understood it, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I've never heard that phrase, so that's really interesting.
It's a whole thing. So our kingdom was set up as a strong seneschal, strong crown kingdom because it was a reaction to the strong officer corps kingdoms. And that was a whole thing too. Curia kingdoms versus, I don't know the term for us when we're not a Curia kingdom, but right, there's a differentiation there too.
Regency kingdom?
I don't know, but yeah, I mean, functionally, right. I don't know that I've heard anybody call us that specifically, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Oh my goodness. And so, word of the wise, when great officers start wanting to have opinions on how their offices are run, and they have opinions that go counter to the crown who has never done this before, that's a fight. Ask me how I know about that.
Okay.
Because in our kingdom, the crown's word is law. Crown says boo, and that's just how it is. And the problem is, this one time I was exchequer and I needed them to sign papers, and they were like, how about I just don't? And I'm like, oh, okay, but my upline says I need this done. And they're like, right. And so there's pluses and minuses both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Not to call anyone out about that, but at the same time, our kingdom went out of our way to not let the crown be hamstrung by the officers. And so that leaves the officers without a ton of recourse when, hey, I really need you. I really need you to do this so I can do my job. Please do this so I can do my job. Like it's got pluses and minuses both ways.
Gotcha.
The incoming Kingdom Chronicler is starting to get a very small taste of that.
Yeah, well, and you won't have it be a matter of financial policy, but you sure will have it be a matter of they just won't answer your emails. Yeah. Sorry you're having to deal with that.
Speaking of you being the Kingdom Chronicler, I would like to speak to you about something offline that is related to your office that I, as one of your deputies, feel very strongly about and would
Okay.
love to chat with you another time.
The appointment will be made.
Excellent. Hee hee.
Why do my bosses keep turning up? I'm depressed. I can't go anywhere and be bad.
Sorry.
You did get my report, right?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I haven't done mine yet. I need to do that.
I'm more
Hi, I'm
I'm
Moonshadow.
more concerned about getting stuff so that I can actually publish stuff in the Black Star in the next few days than I am about like, oh, your newsletter. Oh, that's yeah.
Do you need filler?
No.
Okay.
No, just for your darn officers to give you a report.
Oh yeah, I mean I'm Northkeep's chronicler, and it literally says at the bottom of one of the pages, the remaining officers did not send in their report. So here's a picture of my cat.
Ah.
Oh, I put vultures on one page because the exchequer hadn't sent me a report for an article for 2 months.
Y'all are awesome. Y'all are awesome. I don't feel like I can be quite so cavalier with the kingdom officers, but I'm new to the office, so I'm trying to do the velvet hand first, and then later the gloves will come off, and I'll just be like, well, fine. You don't want to cooperate? You get holes in your newsletter. That's fine.
I find that spoon feeding helps a lot, and it's so much more work to have to babysit grown adults, but at the same time, you know more about what you want than they do.
Yeah.
And it helps so much to think of it in terms of they want to do well by you, and they just like you're not their top priority. And
Yeah.
so if you think about it in terms of give them a script, then it'll be easier for them to just do it.
Thanks for that suggestion.
Here's an
Mhm.
example of a beautiful newsletter report for your office. Perhaps you could use this as a template for the future. My deadline is such and such.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing that with a couple folks here in North Keep because they were like, "Well, I don't know what the heck. We have money. We have kids.
Yeah.
What do you want?" I'm like, "Well, be creative."
One thing that has helped me through the pandemic is having themes each month so that people would come back and do things. And we had 1 month, well, the month of May for Warlord was fiber. And even my heavy marshal found a way to include fiber in his report.
That's super cool.
So
That is fun. So, Rowana, I know you've been to some wars. Have you ever spent time in other kingdoms that you have noticed differences between Ansteorra and the place you visited?
Not that I personally experienced, but the one thing is that I agree that here in Ansteorra we tend to be more. Let me put down my little art here. We tend to be more individual combat. And from what I've seen, the East is the same way. And what I've overheard, they tend to think more as the individual fighter. I, many years ago, was an archer, and the idea that we used arrows and everybody else used, not everybody, but a lot of them used golf tubes. That was a big, because they were afraid that their big old knights would get hurt. Then there were some issues with using arrows. But
I think Edmund talked about that specifically because apparently at one of the early events that involved archery, the Queen of Callantyr took an arrow shot to the face and it partially penetrated her grill.
Ooh.
And so Calantine was like, there will never, ever, 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 ever be another arrow shot for a long time. Totally not okay. We had someone from Callantyr who came on and they were talking about how, because we were talking about Ansteorran expats and what were elements of culture shock between Ansteorra and the kingdom that you went to. And one of them said that Ansteorra labels itself a kingdom of heroes, that we see ourselves as individuals who come together and we all have that individualistic sort of thing going on. Whereas in Vintame, to some extent, and Callantyr to a strong extent, it's not the individual that is the focus, it is the whole. We have households, we have individuals in the field, we have small little units, whereas Callantyr has, this is the Callantyr army and we are one. Callantyr is the household, it's not individual groups creating a household.
Yeah.
And they talked about that as being one of the really big differences for them.
That was really big culture shock for me coming from Callantyr to Ansteorra, is that how to explain it? What I was told, or what I had been sort of raised with the idea of, is that peers had households of their associates. And that was it. But those were all subservient to the needs of the kingdom. There was never ever a question of, well, how can I swear fealty to the crown if I'm in fealty to my knight or my laurel or my pelican? And again, I left before the Masters of Defense were there, so that wasn't part of the discussion in my case. But that was any peer that you talk to in Callantyr would say, you swear fealty to the crown. And that was pretty, like, if you were able to be at an event in Callantyr and it wasn't coronation, and if you were there at coronation, pretty much like the majority of people would swear fealty. I know it was kind of a big deal when brain fart, who was queen with Vlad?
Margaret,
thank you. When Vlad and Margaret stepped up to the thrones, and it was like every human being in the room who could walked forward and swore fealty. Pretty much in Callantyr,
Goosebumps. I get goosebumps just thinking about that moment.
Yeah. In Callantyr, unless you know the person and don't like them, or you're too new to know what it means, like swearing fealty was sort of to the crown was sort of like registering to vote. Like if you're an adult and you're in the SCA and you're in Callantyr and you don't have a really good reason not to, you go forward and you swear fealty. And that's the sort of kingdom level association. The idea of like a household within the kingdom, like holding fighter practices separate from their local group. You don't do that in Callantyr.
Yeah.
And so when I come here and I'm suddenly like, oh yeah, our household like had barbecue and we had our own little like in-household awards and we had fighter. I was like, what? That's like insurrection. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And so coming here, okay, I'm speaking about this from the outside. Okay. I think the way that peerage circles work in Callantyr versus Ansteorra is polar opposite different from the associate side. And I've had peers on both sides confirm. So what I had explained to me, and one thing that I had the hardest time about when I came here, because people would come to me and they'd say, Beatrix, you need a laurel. And I'm like, I don't need a laurel. I've got a laurel. Yes, she lives in the West, but that's not any of my business. Like, I don't need a laurel. I'm fine. They're like, well, you need to find a foster. I'm like, no, I don't. I'm fine. But what I found out is that in Ansteorra, generally in peerage circles, at least in the laurel circle, you need an advocate. That when if your name comes up in the circle, everybody's going to turn and look at your peer and say, so what do you think? Are they ready? And let them have first word about the associate.
Mhm.
In Callantyre, it's the exact opposite. If your name comes, and I've had peers there explain this. I'm not a peer, never sat in a peer circle, don't know for sure. But what they've told me is, when I've sort of told them this story, is that if a name comes up in a peerage circle, your peer is like, I'm not saying nothing. They are the last person to speak about whether or not you're ready. They allow the rest of the circle to say, well, I think they're ready. I think they're ready. Da, da, da. Because the assumption is they're like your mom and dad as a peer, that, it's there that they'll be biased in your favor. Because that's why, you're their person. So of course they're going to say like, yes, absolutely, promote my person because they're awesome. But in Ansteorra, it's kind of like, well, we don't really, I think it's kind of assumed that the peerage circle doesn't always know everybody. Right. And so it's the job of your peer to sort of sell you, but tell everybody how awesome you are and say, yes, I think this person is ready. And I've heard stories where the peer's like, I don't think they're ready yet, so let's hold off. In Ansteorra, well, again, in Callantyre, the idea is, I'm biased, so I can't say anything, right? So that's a polar opposite. So again, I thought, I've already got somebody to teach me the skills that I'm most interested in, that is an awesome person. And I live far enough away from lots of other peers that have the skill set that I'm interested in, that look, if I'm just going to be talking on Skype or now Zoom to sort of have conversations with this peer in Ansteorra, because nobody lives close enough to me to like have a hangout night, I can do that just as easily with my peer that I love who lives in California now. So how does that benefit me? But again, because it's a totally different philosophy of this is how the peerage circle works, I had to have somebody sit down and explain to me, be like, actually, you need somebody in Ansteorra to speak for you in the circle. Like,
so do you have an advocate in the circle in Ansteorra?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So some of that on the Ansteorra side is we've had bad history of people being brought up and then down talked, and there's nobody to say who's bringing feedback to this person so that way they can grow out of this one thing that you're annoyed about. Like, how are we helping them grow as anything? And so we insist on having a person there. I'll turn my screen on for this. We insist on having a person there so that way whenever somebody gets talked about, then it is more productive than I think they're terrible and we should just never talk about them again. We need a person there to say, tell me what's going on.
And also, in theory, that person would also be sort of the designated go-between.
Yes.
Because one thing I've heard about, again, also from some of my friends in Callantyre, is that a peerage circle breaks up, and then 5 different people come over to the same person and say, hey, just so you know, you might want to do this more.
Yes.
And that makes it really obvious. Like, oh,
you.
Yeah. And so that can be very uncomfortable. I mean, again,
we talk about that in Ansteorra too.
Yeah.
We're not sure about that.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
Because each of those 5 people thinks that they're the only one doing it because they're not seeing the 40 other people who were in that circle doing that. So they're pretty sure they're the only one.
Don't ask you how you know.
I've been on both sides of it.
Yeah.
And I've been one of the people doing it too. So yeah.
I still love you.
There's reason for some of that too. It's a tool like any other, but like many other tools, you can hurt as well as you can fix. So that's a thing.
And Master Robin just sent a link to the lyrics of the Queen's Champion song and a video for the singing of the Queen's Champion song. So if you are a member of the Legion of Swashbucklers, I just put a link in the chat. And If you are not, here is a link to the video. And he says that the singing starts at approximately 40 minutes in.
Okay.
So there you go.
Thank you.
Gladly. I'm just delighted that there was a question and we were able to get an answer. And of course, it was Master Robin that immediately had the answer. So, I know Callantyr has a form of combat that we don't generally do in Ansteorra, and that's the Blood of Heroes thing.
That's still the same kind of, they do cut and thrust way more than we do. Blood of Heroes is a whole standalone event that I don't know that they do. It used to be at Grimfells, and they've moved it out of Grimfells, and it's just not been the same thing ever since. But anyway.
No, it was a very big thing for quite a long time.
I'd never been to Blood of Heroes, so I can't speak for it.
It was my favorite event for so long. I think we caught second through when it shifted. I think we didn't catch the first one, but I think we caught the second and on.
There's another thing in Callantyr that's called Toys for Tots tournament.
We had that here for a long, long time. We called it the Baroness's Toy Tourney, and it was a Ventime thing. They didn't do it down south though.
In Callantyr, that's the big, everyone brings their best tournament of the kingdom.
Really?
Yes, because there's no obligation. It's not like Crown Tournament where if you win, there are major responsibilities. In this one, it's 100% bragging rights. And the other thing is that in order to progress in each round of the tournament, you have to have a toy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a motivation to bring 10 toys because you want to be the best in the tournament. But people who, have won Crown a whole bunch of times and don't necessarily want to reign again, don't want the work involved with that, they can fight. They can just be like, heck with it. I'm going to fight in Toys for Tots tournament. And there's not the same, there's not the same reason to hesitate. So that's the, and also they don't, one thing that's different between King's Champion or Queen's Guard, King's Champion, that kind of thing, is that in Callantyr, the royalty choose their own champions. There isn't a tournament for that.
Okay.
And so that's not a separate, I think there's usually an unbelted tournament. There's usually some kind of sort of just show off tournament at coronation, but it's not to stock your entourage or your retinue. It's just for fun. And so again, Toys for Tots it's a fundraiser, it's a materials raiser for a good cause, but it's bragging rights.
Okay.
All the big fighters come and fight and bring their best fight for Toys for Tots. And that's why, again, I had another friend that recently was queen in Callantyr, and they had thought hey, but this was before they were queen. They had thought, I might like to serve by being consort in Callantyr. And a friend of hers who is a duke said, I'll fight for you. And his wife said, the duke's wife said, you're certainly not fighting for me. I'm never being queen again. That's too much work. And so, but the duke said, look, I haven't been fighting a lot. I'm kind of rusty. I can't promise I'm going to win Crown Tournament. And my friend was like, cool, whatever. Give it a try. I would be honored to be your consort. So then this duke won Toys for Tots. And my friend was like, oh crap. This might actually happen because the person who I've agreed to be consort for just won Toys for Tots. Yeah. So, if somebody enters Toys for Tots and does really well, and then they enter Crown Tournament, then there's some indication that it's kind of a predictor tournament for Crown.
Gotcha.
But at the same time, it's not necessarily that the winner will win Crown. It's because they might not even enter, or they might take Duke's prerogative and just say, I bow out of this, so I'm fine. you know. So, but it's you want to fight your best fight in Callantyr. Don't try to fight in Crown Tournament. They won't let you. But if you want your best fight in Callantyr, fight in Toys for Tots.
Interesting. Yeah, we had the Baroness's toy tourney, and that was really, really big back before Northkeep was a barony, and then right as it became a barony. So it had been going on for 5 years before that point. But yeah, it was 4 baronesses competing to see who could raise the most toys for children. And to enter any of the events, you had to donate a toy. So if you wanted to participate in the archery champion or the bardic champion or the ANS, you had to donate a toy. And then the populace could also donate a toy. And the group that donated the most toys as a whole got to take the banner with them and display it for a year. And then they had to host the next one or help put it on. But yeah, it was a really big deal. We had a baroness who was obsessed with claw machines, and wherever she went, she would do the claw machines, and they would just do that every time they went out to dinner all year long, and she would just stuff it in a trash bag. And so she had these massive quantities of toys.
Wow.
That she would bring. So I have kind of wondered about the idea of, that there's so many really cool old traditions that we've kind of lost track of, like Friendbringer. Oh my gosh. Did you hear about that on the Kingdom list? You're shaking your head no.
I know nothing about Friendbringer. Tell me all about it.
Okay. Friendbringer predates Ansteorra as a kingdom. It is a sword that was brought by Michael of Moria to Atenveldt, and he gave it to somebody in Atenveldt, and it was to be carried by someone who was on the path of chivalry, not a knight, but someone who was on that path, who was still relatively new to the society, who was friendly and outgoing and welcoming to newcomers, and it was a sword that was never allowed to be drawn in anger. And it had this beautiful sheath, and it was passed from person to person, and you had to recite the lineage of Friendbringer, and it was lost. Nobody knew what had happened to it. It had not been heard of in 20 years. And when I heard about that as the Kingdom historian, I was like, I must find Friendbringer. I must. It is my quest. So I was working with Tessa, and I built this big old wiki page, and we were trying to find pictures of Friendbringer, and I was contacting every person that she could think of that had ever held it, of, okay, well, who did you give it to? Okay, well, who did you give it to? Okay, where did it go? Well, people just didn't remember. And Doña Marie de Giraud, I'm going to mispronounce that name, Doña Maria, stumbled across the page when she was browsing the wiki. And she's like, this is really cool. And she posted it on the Kingdom Facebook group. And she's like, this is hella cool. Do people know about this? And people are like, oh, hey, that's really cool. And Tessa's like, oh, Friendbringer, I miss her so much. And because Tessa had been one of the people that carried Friendbringer for a time. And you're only allowed to carry it for 6 months. That's it. It must be turned over after 6 months. And if you don't, then you have to return it to the person who started the whole thing. And I get this private message to the historian's account saying, so my husband had Friendbringer at one point, and we went to the wiki page to see if he was listed, and he's not listed. And the person he gave it to is not listed. He doesn't remember who he gave it to, but they're not in the lineage. And then he got to thinking, and we realized we have it in the attic. And I'm like, okay, wait, what? Are you sure? And they said, yes, we do. It's in the attic. We're going to go get it. And I said, okay, breathe. Would you be willing to return it to its original purpose and get it back out in the kingdom? And they're like, yes, we're going to bring it to Kingdom Arts and Sciences. which is now canceled. But they were going to bring it so that Tessa could carry it in her procession. Yeah. So Friendbringer has been found, and they want to return it to its original purpose. And they asked Tessa and I if we had any thoughts or guidance as to where it should go. And so I have provided some guidance. I don't know what will become of that, but I have provided some guidance as to a newcomer in the SCA who is enthusiastic and welcoming and on the chivalric path and doing all the things to get Friendbringer out there again. But people had commented about, hey, this is such a cool tradition. We should get things like that started. And I'm like, yeah, well, have you heard of the Staff of Honor? And they're like, no, what's the Staff of Honor? I said, that was something that Queen Willow started. And she had this big, beautiful oak staff that she walked around with. And if you saw an act of honor or an act of chivalry or something noble, you could go and tell the queen about it, and she would write the name of the person who had done this deed and tie it to the staff. And it was carried throughout the kingdom for the rest of her reign. And she did this both times she was queen. And so I posted that on this whole thread about Friendbringer, and I'm like, hey, have you heard about this? And they're like, that is so cool. So we've got all these really old traditions that we've lost track of. And I want to get them going again because I think they're hella cool. So I have a rose bush outside my house that is a climbing rose. And it is sent up a shoot that was like just straight up. And then it died. So I culled the rose and I kept the length. And so I have this briar rose staff, essentially, that I'm going to remove the bark from and get all polished and pretty and see if I can find a metal worker who can put a metal, cap on the end. And I'm going to bring it to the Vindheim coronet tourney and say, oh, look, we have a staff of honor. Let's take this tradition that is represented in this thing that was rooted in Vindheim soil and do this tradition. And then at the end of each reign, turn those ribbons over to the historian's office and get the stories of these noble moments from this reign. Yeah, so, it all has to come back to, so that's my idea.
That's gorgeous.
Thank you. We shall see if it works, because some crowns are like, hey, the internet is super cool and the wiki is super cool and let's document my reign and let's do the things. And others are like, yeah, whatever. That's not my thing. I'm like, okay, it's not your thing.
I know about every few months I say, oh, and I need to send you stuff to update my wiki, and then I don't. And mostly just because it's the work. It's the work of having to write. So
we could set up a Zoom and you can just simply tell me things and I will type it out for you. I will take dictation.
Okay. Okay. Not tonight.
Not tonight. At your convenience.
Okay. We'll work it out.
I am willing to serve in that capacity.
You're fabulous.
Hey, if I was willing to spend 2.5 hours on the telephone with someone to build their wiki page, not kidding. I'm certainly willing to do a Zoom, and we can, you can send me pictures and I'll get them, color corrected and resized and yada yada.
Wow. Okay. I will. We'll have to set a date. We'll
Yes.
set a date.
Because wiki pages are being used in circles.
That's true.
I have confirmation of that from all 3 circles now. That when they discuss a candidate, they discuss the person and, okay, do they have a wiki page? Let's see examples of their work. And
well, and even so, while we've been chatting, if I've sort of spaced off into the distance, it's because Master Robin was sending me pages and being like, so other than the fact that blah, 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 and he listed off all these things about me, he's like, I really don't know you. So tell me about yourself. And I'm like, he's kind of got most of it. Why? Oh, he's looked at my wiki page. He's like, because you lived in Callantyre and now you live in Bonwick and you've been doing lots of things to serve and da da da. I'm like, oh, and you're interested in costuming and embroidery. And I'm like, oh, yeah, he got that from my wiki page. So yes, I have evidence of that. Yay, Ian, in the last hour.
yes. Yes. They are good and useful things. However, however, that causes consternation sometimes. So.
Because we start to get anxiety about, do we pick candidates based on a resume? This isn't a job application. We're not interviewing candidates. We're just going by how well they put together a resume. And is that actually a good consideration on what a person's been up to? And so that gets the feelings all going.
Yeah. So I had posted that I was teaching a class about how to use your wiki page as your SCA resume. And the following week at the Fireside Chat, His Grace Inman said, I need to ask you about your post. And I said, okay. He said, what do you mean SCA resume? I said, well, all 3 circles of which you are a member sort of require them now. And his face got very animated for a moment, and he just kind of bowed his head for a minute. And he said, we're not hiring mechanical engineers. We're acknowledging peers. Why is a resume necessary? Well, because the kingdom is very big. He's like, so people just aren't traveling? I said, no, the kingdom is huge and there's lots of people. He's like, well, I probably shouldn't talk too more about that. So it's definitely a culture shift. Yeah. And whether it's a good one or a bad one, I think there's arguments to be had in both directions.
And a good part of it is we don't have an hour to talk about each candidate for the most part. And so it's a labor-saving device in a very real way.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about where they've been, what they've been doing? Did they do good work? Who helped them with that? Were they in lead? Did they just follow somebody else's momentum? It's meant to be a starting place. It's never meant to be definitive, because none of the circles in my experience want their thing to be a checkbox.
Right.
We all break out into hives when we think about what exactly do we all have in common? Zubeda and I have very different life experiences, very different SE experiences, very different work experiences, and here we are.
Sitting in the same circle.
I haven't been in a circle yet.
And any number of people get into circles and they're like, I don't even know why I'm here. Like, yay, I'm here. I'm not sad to be here, but how the hell did I get here?
Yeah.
I'm kind of there. That's kind of me. Kinda. Yeah. So I just know I'm supposed to bring cookies to my first actual circle, so I will be doing that.
So I found out when my Laurel went to, okay, quick thing about me. My official original Laurel was my queen in Callantyre, my friend who was queen in Callantyre. And like right before I left, I said, okay, quick story. So this is me. Sorry, I tell stories. You know, thank you. So she was sitting in her rose vigil, and in Callantyre, they consider members of the royal family to be peers. They're called royal peers. So it's not a bestowed peerage. It's anyway. So that's a different thing. So she was having basically a peerage ceremony, a peerage vigil, and she was by herself. And I'd been very, very active in her in her entourage, in her retinue. And they're like, Beatrix, go keep Jane company. Okay. So I sat down with her like, hi. So you know how like in a lot of these movies that are sort of romantic comedy adventure things, like there's this kind of like chemistry, and there's the guy and the girl, and they kind of like each other, but they don't like each other. And then they get in a situation partway through the movie where they think they're gonna die. And so they confess their true feelings for each other because they think they might die, and then they would have gone through death and die. Yeah, that's that moment for me. Will you be my Laurel?
Oh.
And like, I don't know if like, well, you know, when this is all over, and like, because again, this had me serving on her as part of her household in her court had revolutionized my SCA experience. Totally, like, I have more stories about those 9 months than I do the previous 4 years of my SCA membership. But I was just like, you're awesome, and I love you, and you're fabulous, and I don't want you to ever leave me. So could you be my Laurel? And she's like, yeah, sure, of course, absolutely. And so I was like, okay, I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel about like if I'm gonna want like if next week I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, I mean it, but I kind of don't mean like, you know, again, like those romantic interests to people, like, oh, we survived it, so now we have to kind of deal with the consequences of the fact that we confessed our undying love to each other. Like, that was how I was feeling, but we went through it and it was fabulous. But I'm so glad you're here, Elsa.
And a couple, when I did mine, there were 3 of us, and we planned it out, and we did make finger sandwiches and tea and all that, and everybody's like, what are you doing? That is ridiculous. And we're like, we got excited, and they're like, we have an hour. You made us dinner. What are you doing? So, fine. We've had boozy cupcakes. We've had, you know, individual wrapped whatevers. We've had varieties. We've had just what you get, what you see is what you get. We've had pecan clusters. I'm just saying, it ranges.
I can make all of those.
And you wonder why you're invited into the circle.
That's not the reason. It's sure not a detriment, but that's not the reason.
So I don't know if you guys were you at Day in the Park, Beatrix?
No.
Okay. So I was there to help with Patrick's vigil, Elric.
Yeah.
Baron Elric's vigil. And he does not like chocolate. He's allergic to it. So I had prepared a variety of treats, and I had gotten these white Chinese takeout boxes and put his heraldry on them. And in the boxes were blondies and what else did I do? I did blondies. I did
Snickerdoodles?
What's that?
Did you do snickerdoodles?
Snickerdoodles, yes, thank you. But his lady loves chocolate, so there's also truffles, and there was sea salt caramels, and there was marshmallows, and there was like 5 things. And they all went into these little takeout boxes, and they were all individually wrapped so that, you know, there wasn't any germs or anything like that. And we got to give out the little boxes. And I'm kind of thinking about something along those lines for my first circle, so that everybody has a variety. There might even be a gluten-free item in there, you know.
Somebody did the little packets of Cheez-Its once too. That was a big hit.
Interesting. Okay.
Salt, because almost everybody does candy.
Okay.
FYI.
I shall have to ponder.
That's why we say snackies, because we're not the food laurels. We are subsistence. What's the word? I keep seeing this meme go by. Humans are, what's the term for, you've got the metabolism to just go for days. Like, you can walk for 1,000 years. You might not be able to run for as long, right? And so you just need something to keep you going on a steady pace, as opposed to, we expect the laurels to have something haute, right? Pelicans aren't about that. Pelicans are about, what do we need to get the job done and move on?
Okay.
Energy bars.
Maybe I need to learn how to make cheese crackers.
Ooh. My sisters made them. They're a hoot. They're a little bit tricky, but yeah, like I've seen it done.
I've watched an episode of Great British Bake Off in which they made crackers by hand, and that was intriguing, and it sparked some So yeah, okay, snackies, not necessarily treats, but snackies. Interesting. Yeah.
We've got a lot of crossover. Oh, sorry, you were saying.
No. I was just going to say, see, I didn't InterKingdom Anthropology and the fact that I'm not a peer. Yeah, I had no idea that there were expectations in Ansteorra for having to bring stuff.
Yes, like they're both are and are not, and it's more so. So the secret is it's much more of a test of who you're connected with than it is what you actually bring. Right. So if you bring the wrong thing and you have a story for why, then everybody will accept that as, well, that's just what happened. If you show up and you know that you were supposed to and you didn't, then that's a whole lot of a different story than if you show up and everybody says, why didn't you bring me candy? Then they're like, what? And so it's the self-reinforcement of if you are well prepared to be here, then you will know all the answers to all the questions that they're going to ask. And that is the definition of a kingdom of the word. If you didn't talk to the right people, then sorry about you.
Right.
It's a big failing of our kingdom because we leave people in the dust so hard. If you don't like a person, then you just won't tell them a critical piece of information they will probably need to know. And then they just aren't in the right place at the right time with the right thing.
Huh.
A little devious.
That's not okay.
There was a lot of that for a good long time, and I think we're backing off of a lot of that, but I remember whole years of that kind of thing.
Well, and that's a lot how I feel about the fact that I'm Kingdom Chronicler is people, I mean, I've had people in my barony, and I don't think this was meant in a bad way, but they were like, I've never been invited to become a kingdom officer. Like, and I was invited. Someone reached out to me and said, hey, you know that Kingdom Chronicler is opening up. You have the credentials. You should apply. And I don't see it as necessarily that I'm, some stellar, amazing person that I'm now going to be a kingdom officer. It's that I just happen to be at the right place at the right time with the right set of skills. And with people who are willing to say, hey, you're friends with this other person who's a former kingdom chronicler, I'm sure they would be willing to like give you advice and spell check for you and all that, make sure you don't screw up when you do your first few black stars. And that's what I need in terms of confidence, is someone to look over my shoulder and be like, yeah, that's good. Okay. As opposed to, me just kind of, I hope this is right. Right. So I think in some ways I've benefited from that, in that I'm, in that I was in the right place at the right time in order to, take this new office. But again, not because I'm so amazing, whatever. It's that I was like, I got the job.
On the one hand,
I heard that you were so amazing that you beat out all the competition.
The tales of my my victory are a bit exaggerated.
But that's another aspect of it too, is in that game, in that version of how things work, when you hear that a person is qualified and liked and you don't think you could do a better job, or you don't hate them, then you just don't apply. If you're super qualified and it looks like it's already handled, then you just walk away and hope for another timing, and that's it. Nobody ever knows you were interested. And
a little bit like a less public version of Duke's prerogative.
Yes.
Sort of saying, you know what? They're applicants. They got it. I'm good.
Yes.
Well, I have to say, for the longest time, of course, I'm probably the person who's actually played in the kingdom the longest. We never knew when there was Jane Doe didn't know there was a kingdom office open, or a area office. It was kind of spread word, And I really appreciate that they're publishing, we need this.
Yeah, that's important. It more levels the playing field so that people can express their interest. I'd like to take a second to welcome Aben Ibn Khalid, who is here from Atlantia. He has stopped in once before into our chats, and so we're delighted to have him back. Tonight we are talking about InterKingdom Anthropology and things that make Ansteorra different than other kingdoms. And, you know, we're perfectly happy to steal cool ideas from other places. We're good that way. So if you have anything that is unique to Atlantia, and if you've ever visited Ansteorra or met Ansteorrans that you think that we might benefit from, I welcome you to make that contribution. We were just talking about kingdom offices and how they get filled and how people express their interest in them. And we happen to have, I think, 3 local chroniclers and the kingdom chronicler here. So we kind of got a little bit sidetracked onto that, but we've been talking about all sorts of things, from how period circles work to combat styles and rapier combat and communication styles and all sorts of things. Something that I've heard of other kingdoms doing more so, I've never heard of it being done in Ansteorra, and I could be wrong. And this was something that I've been very curious about as a non-landed court baroness, is I have been told in other kingdoms that court barons and baronesses host courts, informal, at events, with a herald, with stuff going on. They don't do things on behalf of the crown, though they could be asked to, but that they host courts and do stuff, give out largesse, give out word fame, have competitions that they host. They might have their own bardic championship or other tournament. That is done in other kingdoms. We don't tend to do that here.
As far as I know, curious. It is allowed in Ansteorra. It's not usually done because we have so many baronies.
Right, that's what I've heard generally, is that it's allowable, it's just uncommon.
I have never heard of that ever.
I've also never heard of that, and we've outsourced our courts to other groups because I don't think we knew that.
Probably because it hasn't been needed in 20 years. You know, I mean, it may be a holdover from when we were part of Ottenbelt.
Yeah, it could be.
20 years ago, that's when we were doing that. So it might have been longer than that. Yeah, that makes sense.
That would be interesting in Moonshadow.
Yeah, well, you guys have got a couple court barons and baronesses up there.
Now we do. We didn't used to.
Right, right.
But I know the reason why it came up in Glaslyn when we had a knight and a court baroness. And that would have been 15 years ago or something, that the crown could give the court baroness permission to pass on an award to someone who at the time was very ill, and we did not. So, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I'm changing the subject slightly because thinking about people holding courts and all that kind of thing. One thing that struck me that is huge, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, logistically, that's a huge difference in different kingdoms between Ansteorra and other kingdoms. In Ethelmark, mm-hmm. all their awards are original. Mm-hmm. All of them. So in Ansteorra, we have charters for AOA and grant, and then original for peerages. In Callantyr, they have different award originals for each reign. So like the AOA awards that I have from Callantyr are different from the AOA awards that would be received by someone in Callantyr now, or even 6 months after I did. That they're redesigned to match the reign in which they're given. This changes the dynamic of when you're giving awards, because like I was shocked when I came to Ansteorra and someone was called into court and they said, we're giving, you know, royal court, and they're being given awards that were written up by someone, by a crown 2 years ago. That's it, you know, there's much more of a flexibility if you don't have a set, like this is in the style of this person, you know, that if the AOA styles are the same across reigns, is that you can have much more of an emphasis of people being present in court to get their award. While in Callantyr, where it's original to the reign, there's much more of a push then to send awards home with a representative and give it to the person during the reign, rather than waiting and giving it to your descendants, you know, future kings and queens to give on your behalf.
That varies from Ansteorran crown to Ansteorran crown, though, because there's some crowns that push those out. If you're not at the event, it goes to your landed, and the landed is supposed to give it out at the next populace.
Okay.
But even still, I mean, Northkeep had a castellan 2 years ago, I think, that they were giving out awards that had been granted 5 years prior because the person had just never showed up to a court.
Yeah.
They didn't go to populace meetings. They didn't participate in that way. They did other stuff.
Right.
So yeah, it varies a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was one for Vlad and one court for Vlad and Maggie in which they were giving out awards that were, I think one person who was then, I think they got their court barony, but they also received their AOA.
Wow.
In the same court.
And some of that is this kingdom is in love with the concept of surprise. And so if it goes home with somebody and it gets recorded in the OP right then you can browse your own OP and then just not know why it says what it says.
Yeah.
Which gets people off.
Have a big thing about having the crown hand you your.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
Well, so then when I went to Ethelmark and I started talking about how we do awards and all that kind of thing here in Ansteorra, they kind of went, wait a minute, you guys do like adult coloring book style? Like, what do your scribes do all day? That nobody's doing. I mean, we do all of them original. We do AOAs original. We do simple AOAs original. And I just go like,
that's a big kingdom.
I know. And I just kind of go like, I go, no, we're fine. We're quite busy. Thank you very much. We don't need to do quite all the things original. That's fine. And they're just like, your scribes must be lazy. I'm like, not my, yeah. Like, no. So it was, again, that was just a really interesting like way that Ansteorra is different. Yeah. And again, is it better? Is it worse? I don't know, but it's different.
So riffing off of that though, something that I think needs to be more of a cultural conversation in Ansteorra is that our scribes are doing massive amounts of work, and it isn't always towards a laurel, it's service. And we need to be better about recognizing that this is a service that is being provided to the crown, to the populace. So when you have someone who has painted 100 charters, 200 charters, 1,000 charters, Emma Farewell.
I was going to say, we don't even need to say who it is because we're all thinking the same thing.
Yeah. That is
and
service.
Kind of the catch is not to cut you off again. She's not the only one is the catch, but she's the name we all think of off the top of our head. She's
right.
Absolutely notable in that way. She's not the only person working at her class. And
Right.
the part where we're not calling out all of those names every single court, we've gotten so much better. It used to be real hit or miss, and now it's mostly incidental when they miss it, but still, those should be names we
Yeah.
all know, and we don't call all of them.
Yeah, and that's some of that falls to record keeping for the office that I don't know about other offices, but when I assumed my office, there were exactly this many releases in the records of my office. This many. There were no copies of any articles. There was no copies of any art. There was no copies of anything that had ever been submitted. There were no copies of past issues. There was no record keeping, even though there was a Google account. And when I took on historian, I got nothing. So even though we have the technology to track these things much more better, we're not always doing it. So I hope that Sable Scroll has some sort of ongoing record keeping of, oh, hey, that's Zubeida. And in this range, she turned in 5 scrolls. And in this range, she turned in 2. And in this range, she turned in 6. And in this range, she turned in, and she's done a total of 75 scrolls. I don't know if there's any kind of document out there, but there should be. And at some point, that needs to be looked at in terms of, this is a body of service. This is a body of art. What are we doing with that information? Is that information flowing to people that need to have that information?
And then that punches people's resume feelings. That's the checkbox feelings. That's the I did it because it was what I do to decompress feelings.
Yeah.
We're all complicated about that because
Yeah.
for a reason. Yeah, for acres of reasons.
Yeah. But
Well,
like there's a very skilled artisan in my local group. She does not want to be a Laurel. The Laurel Circle terrifies her. She's had very negative experiences with Laurels. She's had the attack Laurel situation. At her very first event, she had up here talking about her clothes in the ladies' room. And she's like, this is my first event. I don't know what else to wear. You know. And so she's afraid of the Laurels. She doesn't want to be part of that circle. But she's doing this stellar work and she's doing this amazing service. And that's what she'd like to be known as someone who is serving. And I think that we need to maybe have more flexible thinking about, oh, well, you're making art, so of course you want to be a Laurel. Not necessarily. So, Kitty! What a pretty baby. Oh my goodness, what a pretty baby.
Oh, what are you doing on the TV?
This is Odo. He's our chief of security.
Look, your sister's on the TV. Look.
Oh, yeah. That was enough togetherness time. He's ready to move on.
This one too.
I was weird enough. We could just not be weird again. That'd be fine.
Zubeida,
Yes.
are you interested?
I can't tell what it is.
Ansteorra Kingdom Dance Symposium.
So, yes, but here's the thing. I'm not allowed to republish them anywhere. I can scan it. I can have a copy of it in my file, and it will do absolutely nobody any good. Because I'm not allowed to republish.
It'll be scanned and saved somewhere, though.
But it'll be scanned and saved somewhere.
Great.
Now, whether somebody knows to request it from my office is a whole nother thing.
Do you have lists, though?
I do not. I have
That
been
could be
working on...
Threatening, but she doesn't send me any work to do.
Well, I haven't done any scanning with the newsletters in quite some time because I've had a whole lot of other things going on. And I need to get back on that. and for a while my push was arts and sciences articles. And then I had people reaching out going, hello, yeah, you put my name on a list of people that submitted an article 30 years ago. Why the heck would you think I would want that published? I'm like, okay, it was just a question. But yeah, newsletters, arts and sciences articles, stuff like that. Is that something that I know that there was talk about an arts and sciences issue being done.
Yeah. That was supposed to go out last month. That was going to be Aubrey's sort of farewell project.
Okay.
And it didn't get done. Okay. So she's going to get it published this month.
Gotcha.
October.
Okay.
So I'm happy to have the transition from one Kingdom Chronicler to the other Kingdom Chronicler be a long process.
Gotcha.
As long as I know what stuff is my job and I know what stuff is her job, she can delay in doing her job as long as she needs to. And I can, as long as I'm like, okay, this is my stuff, this is what I've got to get done, get it done.
Okay. What's your question, Aubin? What does a Kingdom Chronicler do? The Kingdom Chronicler, I will let her answer.
Okay. I'm just stepping in as Kingdom Chronicler for Ansteorra, so I'm officially going to take the role when we have coronation at the end of September. But I'm working on our current newsletter right now. So okay, so one of the things I'm in charge of doing is actually creating the Kingdom newsletter, which includes reports from Kingdom officers and our directory for officers and event ads. So one of the things I've been sort of being strict about right now is trying to make sure that everybody has their event ads for October in now so that I can advertise for them. So the main thing is Kingdom newsletter. The other thing that I do is I supervise all of the local newsletters. So I make sure that each group that is supposed to have a newsletter has a newsletter that meets the necessary criteria on a regular basis as often as possible, basically. It's possible if a barony goes for a certain length of time without publishing a newsletter that they will lose their baronial status. So
what is that time period? Because when I took it over, we were publishing quarterly.
Yeah.
And I have stepped us up to every other month.
Yeah. That's supposed to be if you miss. See, I thought it's if you miss 2.
That's what I was told, was if you publish monthly, you could miss a month. Mm-hmm. But if you published every other month, because there was no quarterly,
yeah,
that you couldn't miss one.
I think
it was kind of weird. It was like you had to publish in there.
Well, I had a group that has only published once this calendar year. I stepped in and they said, oh, by the way, I've only published once this calendar year. I'll get one to you in October. And I'm like, no, you're going to get me one before the end of August or you're losing your status. Now, they were normally publishing quarterly. So I think it's if you publish quarterly, you have to get the next one in or you lose your status. If you are publishing like monthly, I think you can miss 2. Like, I think you have to publish at least once a quarter, right? So if you miss 1, like if you miss 2 and you're publishing monthly, you still publish once that quarter and you're still okay. But if you are publishing quarterly, you gotta get it in. Otherwise, you lose your status. And that's like, I'm sorry you missed your deadline, you're no longer a barony type thing. So I need to really hammer that down because there was even some ambiguity in my own Kingdom training where I thought it was like, you can't miss 2. So if you miss, like if you're supposed to publish in January and then April, if you miss January and then you missed April, then you'd lose your status. They're like, yeah, but I need to hammer it down in my own mind. But those are the 2 main things, is supervising. I mean, and that's also why I'm supposed to have, as Kingdom Chronicler, I'm supposed to have deputies in each of the regions, because they're supposed to also be looking at the newsletters within the groups of their regions and sort of be in charge of making sure, like, hey, we haven't gotten a newsletter from you. Like, they're supposed to be more on task about making sure all the newsletters have what they need and that people are publishing regularly, so that I don't have to be doing that on top of everything else.
Right.
And then the other thing that I'm in charge of as Kingdom Chronicler is what are called the Black Fox Awards. And that is a society-wide chronicler award thing where they have, you submit articles and artwork and entire newsletters and all those kinds of things. And each kingdom submits what they consider to be sort of the best that they have in terms of artistry and articles and regularly repeating articles and special issues and all that kind of thing. They say, here's what we got. And then at the kingdom level, at the society level, they look at all the newsletters from all the kingdoms that are submitted in each of those categories. And they say, this is the best one from society. This is the best one out of society. This is the best one out of society. So it's one level of honor for to be nominated by your kingdom. Like that your Kingdom Chronicler thinks that your work was the best. And then, but that means it's sort of the top 20, kind of gets to move on to the next level. And then if you actually win the Black Fox Awards, that's really prestigious, because it's the best out of the whole society.
So you said a magic word.
I did.
You did. You said Black Fox.
I did.
And it just so happens that I got a package in the mail last week of someone who had reached out and said, hey, I have some drawings by Black Fox. Do you want them? And I said, well, yes, I would. And so these have not been seen ever in public.
Wow.
This is an original Black Fox. This is John the Plain of Shern, who was the very first knight made in Ansteorra, and his lady, Marsali Fox.
That's fabulous.
And then he also did one of just Marsali.
Wow.
So the person who holds the copyright to Black Fox's art is here in Northkeep. And we do have a release for Black Fox's art on file with the Kingdom Chronicler. So Audrey can get you a copy of that. But she is tentatively thinking about permitting republication of some of his stuff. And we had talked briefly about things like Warthaven and some of his covers and some of his artwork. And it's this very, very slow process of me talking to her of, hey, you're the copyright holder. We'd love to do this. We have a release, but we'd love to do this. I'll think, oh yeah, I need to do that. I'll think about that, come back to me in a bit. So we may be able to get Black Fox art for publication in the Black Star. Maybe. If that's a thing that you would like, oh Kingdom Chronicler.
Yeah, whatever. Nope. Oh, why are we so hot?
So on the wiki, anybody that has Black Fox art that has submitted it for their page, you can look up category Black Fox and it will show everybody that has a scanned art of Black Fox stuff.
Cool.
So yeah, I think it would just be neat, like, not that you ever have room in the Black Star for incidental stuff, but like,
I mean, with things being as weird as they are right now,
yeah,
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
So so I like what I'm learning. Again, I am now currently, as we speak, I'm taking a break from thinking about it. But as of tomorrow, I hope to be heading in for proofreading my second Black Star. So I'm still learning, right? This is still in process. But one of the things that I'm learning is you got to fill the space somehow, right? Big blank white pages are not good for anybody. And so it's good to sort of have a stash of stuff you can do. And what the little light bulbs going off in my head when you were talking about Black Fox is that I have to submit my nominations in June. And so wouldn't it be awesome? Because it's just what's on my brain to have Black Fox artwork when we're submitting Black Fox Award stuff. Like on the cover of the Black Star. Because I'm always looking, that's the one thing that I'm now learned is that there aren't a whole lot of, there aren't a lot of people banging down my door saying, hey, do you think you could maybe honor me by posting some of my artwork on the cover of the Black Star? I'm hitting pavement asking people, can I publish your art? Could you sign a release for this? Is that photo, may I have photographs from that event that happened last month? It's quite the opposite of what I was expecting. There was one time I was planning on sending artwork. This was years ago. I was sending artwork to my local baronial newsletter, thinking like, okay, this is what Beatrix is up to. And I accidentally sent it to the Kingdom Chronicler email rather than my local chronicler email, along with all the releases. And the Kingdom Chronicler at the time said, oh, this is awesome. I'm totally putting on the cover of the Black Star. And I'm like, what? Okay. And that's how I got some of my embroidery on the cover of the Black Star. But really, it's really much more me saying, hey, send me your art, please. You have done pretty stuff. Will you send it to me? Versus, I've got 15 artisans applying for the honor of having their stuff on the Black Star. We'll do that one, maybe, if they're lucky, right?
Because we all know that there's really amazing art in the kingdom. And so for me to say, look at the cool thing I'm doing feels very kindergarten. And then if you say, hey, I really thought that what you did was really cool, I'll be like, oh, it's still kind of stupid, but if you really want it.
Yeah. I know that feeling from the inside out. But at the same time, but if everybody's too shy, if everybody's too like, oh, none of my work is worthy, then we get nothing. So I'm reaching out, and I should be more wide. Right now I'm being lazy, and like if I see a friend and I'm like, hey, you're doing cool stuff, can you send me an artist release and photograph and I can send that and post it in the cover of the Black Star? They're like, oh, you would do that? I'm like, yes, give me the paperwork, oh my word. So I'm on a limited scale. I've just started. I'm trying to reach out to people and saying, hey, like, I know you write awesome poetry. Could you write a poem and I could include it in some of the open space in the Black Star? They're like, you do that? I'm like, yes, you're doing me a favor. And I just need to extend that to other visual artists that I know make pretty stuff.
If I may offer a word of advice.
Yes.
When you reach out to people, have them rat out somebody that they are impressed by too.
This is why Libby is awesome.
Yeah. Elsa's no fool. All right. Yes.
Yeah, because I kind of ran out of pictures, and my drawing isn't that good, but it was something different because I got tired of the cover being the same every month. But I've asked, and of course, with the COVID thing going on, it's hard too, because you can't go up to somebody and just ask. Yeah. You're going to, and I'm not real good with online stuff.
I'm okay with online stuff.
Well, you guys are all younger than me too.
But what I'm bad at is recruiting people. I'm bad at asking people. which is part of why when you were going back to, you're so glad that we're actually like publishing when we have officer openings. I'm like, yes, it's not my job to try to find somebody to in the Southern region to become the Southern regional. I mean, it's good if I can, right? If it's, but it's not 100% my job to suss everybody out and say like, hey, you're my friend, will you do this for me? Like, I don't have to. People can volunteer. People can say, hey, I'm willing to do that. I'd be like, I don't know you at all, but that sounds awesome. You know, I haven't met you yet, but I'd love the help.
Speaking of which, my application said, I really don't want to do this job, but I know it's a required office for the barony. And if you get no one else, then I will do the job. And they got no one else, so I'm doing the job. But after I published my first issue, someone came forward and said, oh, hey, so like I wasn't really settled the last couple months, but now I'm like settled in and I've got a computer set up and I'd like to do that job. And I'm like, and they were like, well, maybe I can take it in 2 years. I said, no. 2 years warrant is the maximum that it can be done. It's only 6 months at a time. It gets renewed every 6 months. You can have it in 6 months. Do you want it in 6 months? And they're like, yeah. So I'm going to be sending you a note that says that my office is up for applications and they're going to be applying. And
okay, thank you for the heads up.
FYI.
Well, you know, because I have my own insecurities, and so be like, Subeda, you don't want to work for me, but you're such a great historian. You don't love me. You hate me. I'm a horrible person.
But I'm still going to be working for you because I'm one of your deputies as the historian.
And that way, you're not doing 2 jobs at once, which is very good.
Well.
Okay, you'll only be doing 2 jobs at once.
Well,
now you're only doing 4. You're doing 4 jobs, and you'll be going down to 3.
No, I'm currently doing 3 jobs.
Okay,
and I'll be going down to 2.
Okay,
but then immediately taking a 3rd.
Oh, okay. You're not my responsibility entirely. You are a grown woman and can live your own life. I am stepping down from being local herald so that I can be Kingdom Chronicler, and I am not taking any more local offices until I step down from being Kingdom Chronicler.
Well, I've been holding one of my offices for 11 years, 12 years, 12 years. So,
so local herald. That was the next question from Abin. What's the local herald do? The local herald, good
night, all.
Okay, good night.
We are at the 9 o'clock hour.
There are certain things, the main thing that I'm going to speak in very general things, because there are things that I should be doing in my job. Yeah, it's supposed to be 9 p.m. our time. But whatever. Yeah, that's central. There are things about being local herald that I do not enjoy doing. And so I basically said, I'm not doing that part of my job. The main thing that a local herald is supposed to do is be the liaison between the people in their area and the College of Heralds. That's their job. They are supposed to encourage heraldic activity in their group. All right, so they're supposed to do reports and they're supposed to encourage heraldic activity. So they're supposed to do. Now, some of the ways that they can do that is if they live in a barony, they can be court herald to their landed nobility. I don't like doing that job. So, I mean, yeah, I don't like being court herald. So I said, find your own court herald. I'm not going to do that. I'll submit court reports. I'm happy to do that, but no. Especially because they already know this. I'm making this public. They already know. We've had this conversation. They were wanting, if we were having in-person events, to have like pop-up courts. And so I would have, if I was their personal court herald, I'd have to basically follow them around all day. And I'm like, I've got my own stuff to do. So no. Okay, pop-up courts. So instead of having people, instead of having court at the end of the day and have that be the one time in the day that everybody gets awards, pop-up courts is, hey, look, here we are, landed nobility. We see somebody in our group. They're doing something cool. We're opening court right now in the middle of the road. Okay, we're going to give this, we call this person into our court. Come in. We're giving you an award. Awesome. Here you are. Great. Now you've had an award. We're closing court now. Bye. right? So that's a thing some people do, and that they see somebody doing something awesome, or they see somebody that they were wanting to give an award to, and they just open up court right then and give them the award right then. One of the benefits of that is that sometimes people are very anxious, and so they don't want to necessarily like be called up and have to walk up in front of everybody in front of court and be like, everybody's staring at me, right? When it's a public court, it's usually somebody, yes, like Zubeida. It's usually a lot less formal. It's really quick. It's just you and the person. It's a much smaller group of people standing around watching. Usually it's somebody in the context of them doing something that they already enjoy. And so they're surrounded by people that they are friends with. And so they don't have to worry about like, who are the weirdos looking at me, right? So there's some benefits of up courts. I don't like them because I like to be around when my friends are getting their awards. And if it's like, oh, you missed, they had field court over at thus and such field, and so got thus and such award, I'd be like, and I wasn't there. Bad luck for me. And also, if you're a local herald and you're the court herald for your local nobility, you have to follow them around all day because you never know when they're just gonna be like, we're gonna open court. Okay, open court, right? No. You're also supposed to help people. So that's one aspect of what a local herald could potentially do to promote heraldry in their area. Another thing they could also do is help with the submission of names and devices to be registered by the society. So we can all be called whatever we want to start off with, but if you want to reserve your name forever just for you, you have to have it registered with the College of Heralds. Also having a device, which can be the thing on the heater shield or just a little badge that you stick on everything, which is what I'm getting.
Which is what you were whispering and I couldn't hear.
I know, because I'm so excited. I've had a device registered for a long time, and probably, yeah, more than a decade. I've had a device registered, but with the last 2 virtual herald points, I've been registering badges, and I have like 5 being considered right now, and it's kind of exciting to go from having none and being like, oh, I should have a badge, I should get a badge, to suddenly like, I've got 5 on the pipeline. Like, yes. Sweet.
I have 3 from the last Herald's Point.
Awesome.
Now, granted, 2 of them I'm probably going to get a spanking on because they are for the Ansteorra. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm derailing. Please go ahead.
No, derail.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay, so there has been a badge designed for the Kingdom Historian's Office going back 15 years, but it's not official because Ansteorra never submitted it because no one.
Yeah, no one submitted it.
Because no one submitted it. And I've had some people say that it's not necessary. And I've had people say, oh, that's kind of cool, but it's never been submitted by the kingdom. So I have registered it as a personal badge. Same thing for Vindheim. Vindheim does not have an official badge for its historian. And I have, so Ansteorra's device has elements that tie it to our parent kingdom. It has the flames. So for Vindheim's badge, for its historian, it has elements that tie back to Ansteorra. Ansteorra's has stuff that, so there's this continuity of design. So yes, 2 of the badges are for beloved offices. And if the kingdom would like to have it, I would be happy to surrender it to them. I just don't know how to go about that process. But I'm at least going to go through the process and get them created and official and registered. And then I'm going to reach out and say, hey, by the way, the office has been using it. Because the historian, there is no society historian. All the badges that are used by offices are based on the ones that are registered to society.
Yeah.
So there is no parent badge for that office. Mm-hmm. We've just been using our own.
Yeah.
So now it's going to be officially registered.
Well, making that transition is above my pay grade heraldically, because
Yeah.
I am wee baby infant herald in terms of device and name submission, or right, like guiding other people on this path. Like, no, I need my path guided.
Yeah. So I've submitted 2 for offices, and then I had someone describe me as a expletive deleted ray of sunshine. I'll take it.
Not wrong.
And so, because I love Moonshadow, Oodles and Bunches, and their badge is a solar eclipse, this is Sable, a ray of sun issuant from Sinister, Argent.
Cool.
So it's a very eclipsy sort of ray of sunshine, yet turned to Sinister, because while I am a ray of sunshine, I'm also an expletive ray of sunshine. And I have no problems with that sort of wordplay. So,
and one last thing that the local herald has to do, and this is, I've been trained to be aware that this is an underappreciated thing that local heralds are supposed to do, is when a group hosts an event, they also need to help, they need to make sure that the heraldic needs of, you probably know who taught me, Elsa, you probably know. It is part of the local herald's responsibility to make sure that the heraldic needs of an event are being met, and that those sorts of things are planned in advance of the event, and not like at the last minute, oh, by the way, I guess we need heralds. We'll just find somebody. Like, no, it's the local herald's job to find somebody to do that, if it's not themselves.
So the herald's job ends up being a catch-all for all kinds of things that are unrelated that have the same name. And that's part of the catch, is it's a massive, stupid, huge job if you do all of the parts that have separate officers at the kingdom level, but you're just at the local level. So that's a whole thing too.
Yeah.
Kitty!
Which is part of why when I took over the office, I was very clear of like, I'm happy, this part of the job, I'm happy to have somebody else take care of. I'm happy to deputize those responsibilities to somebody else. And I'm just going to focus on this bit. I mean, it's the same way that, you know, a local night marshal, like, yeah, basically their job is to collect waivers and submit reports. It's not their job to authorize. It's not their job to inspect. It's not. But a lot of people sort of take on those additional responsibilities because it's like, well, you're the night marshal, so isn't it your job? And be like, actually, no. Any more than it's the Minister of Arts and Sciences job to teach arts and sciences classes. They're not. They're supposed to encourage other people. If they have a class, they should teach it. But, you know, one of my things, this is me, I probably should, anyway, one of my things is I like to have it be very clear who's, like, what are my responsibilities and when do they end? Right? What is it my job to get done? And what is it somebody else's job to get done? And I don't want people doing my job, and I don't want to be doing other people's jobs. So if I find somebody's doing my job, I feel like, get back in your lane. That's my job. Trust me to do my job. I can do my job. If somebody else is not doing their job, I want to be able to say, hey, do your job. You're not doing your job. I'm not supposed to be doing your job. And so that's one of the things about me, is that I'm very much, you know, what are my jobs as Kingdom Chronicler? My job as Kingdom Chronicler is make sure the local chroniclers are doing their job, make the news, make the Black Star every month, and advise people for the Black Fox Awards. Technically, those are my 3 jobs. But some of them require me to do other people's jobs too. And I just try to have people not say, oh, yeah. Like periodically people say, hey, I got in my local meeting. Hey, we have an event coming up in October. Has people gotten in their Black Star ads in time since the due date was 3 days ago? And I'm sitting there being like, hi, I'm here. That's kind of my job to take care of. So I could trust me to take care of that. I'm like, oh, right. Yeah. Okay. That's my thing. This is me confessing my sins in a public forum.
So,
Confession
right.
is good for the soul.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
We have people who typecast themselves into traditional roles and then they get upset if somebody else does the job that they thought they were already doing. And then we have people who are optimistic that they can do all kinds of things and then just don't get around to it. And then we've got, And then we've got people whose life turns a 360 at no notice. 180, because the 360 is right back where you started.
You just get dizzy.
Anyway. Yes. And so on the one hand, I've been around that game of infuriated that people wouldn't just know that I'm already doing this. And I'm like, now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm like, I don't want to still do the thing that I used to do 10 years ago. We can have somebody else do that. That's fine.
Yeah.
And now I'm in a local chronicler office that I didn't strictly want. And now I have to remind myself, I really do have to do the thing that was due today. I'll do that tomorrow.
It's fine.
Well, and our tradition is to have it at Populous anyway, and so Populous is Tuesday. So
well,
I'm going to chronically be late, but just FYI.
Just warn your regional.
She knows I stepped in for, yeah.
Okay.
Diana's in my group.
Oh, right. Got it.
So, she knows I'm already a problem child before we've even started.
Right.
But as a point of word fame, she left me a plug and play office. It's so easy. So
that's great.
And I really wanted to adopt that for Northkeep, but we've got some folks that are like, no, under no circumstances do we want something that is like, convenient for cell phones. That's not okay. We want printed copies. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So, but my last issue was 20 pages.
Yep.
Which was a lot better than, what we've done previously.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first one was 4 pages.
Yeah.
But yeah, did 20 this time. Felt pretty good about that. I liked my crossword puzzle.
I wish I were better. Go ahead.
We've always found that interactive is helpful. Everybody gets distracted in the middle of it, but then they are more fun about being distracted. You were saying.
I wish I were better at making crossword puzzles, but word searches are relatively easy.
Word searches are fun. I don't know how to do those. There are crossword puzzle generators online.
There are word search generators too.
That's what I used, was a word search generator for my birthday kit, which I suppose I can post that as sort of my final hurrah of, by the way, here's the word search, with 40 words because birthday. But I was raised on the New York Times crossword puzzle, so I'm a little snobby about it. But then it's intimidated, right? I'm like, oh, I can't ever be as awesome as Will Short. So why even try?
If I come up with a truly terrible crossword puzzle, would you like me to send it to you for the Black Star?
Always.
The one that I did was very Northkeep centric. So
send me a crossword puzzle.
Okay.
I'll
send you a wiki article. Send you an article about the wiki.
Yes.
With like a screenshot of what somebody's wiki page looks like.
Sure. This is my no. Oh no, don't send that to me, Jabeda. No, don't send me stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. We have an artisan who is a professional artist for a living and has gone from professional artist to artist who teaches at Pino's Palace to high school art teacher professional art dude. Matthew McGillivray.
Oh, yeah.
Is his SCA name.
Mm-hmm.
His work is utterly ludicrous. It's so good. And he had done some little like snippety drawings, and I was like, you should submit those to the Black Star. You should submit those to the Ansteorra 40th year program, because Lilith was saying that she needed art for that. So I will nudge him and tell him, hey, Matthew, you need to submit pictures of the stuff you've already done.
Yeah.
Because he's done like egg tempera, 100% period, everything technique, triptychs and shields. And he's currently the arts and sciences champion of 6 different groups.
Yeah. Hook me up.
Yeah, I will push him your way.
Please do.
Yeah. I will do that thing. All right, well, we're like almost half an hour past the deadline. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up for tonight, because my husband is now applauding the idea of this being wrapped up for the night.
Same.
So thank you all for joining us.